G'day everyone, Mark here from Inside Rugby, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the Six Nations that kicks off in just over a month's time and give you my first take on what I think is going to happen in next year's competition. Now, there's been a lot of new rugby fans come and join this beautiful game over the course of 2024, and I thought just before I start this video I'd give a very quick brief history on the Six Nations so they understand exactly what it is, because it hasn't always been the Six Nations. No, in fact in 1910 when the competition kicked off, it was known as the Five Nations. England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland and France took on each other, and that competition went through to 1931. Then there was a little bit of a pause, and back in 1947 they started again and went through all the way to 1999 when there was a change to the competition, and we would see the Five Nations become the Six Nations, because in the year 2000 we saw Italy join the competition, and that's why it's become the Six Nations that we know of today. Okay, there we go, a little bit of history on the Six Nations. Now let's get into the rest of the video. I'm going to talk about some of the areas that I think are going to be really important to watch and who might have some of the advantages in the 2025 edition of the Six Nations. When it comes to the forwards, I think there's going to be four packs that we're going to really have to keep our eye on that could determine the outcome of next year's Six Nations competition. And for me, I was very impressed with France and their forwards, in particular in the game against the All Blacks. But when it comes to France, for me, their inconsistency is one of the things. And let's face it, most teams, they turn up on the day when they play the All Blacks. It's an inspirational game that really raises the level of most teams, and they go out there and play their best game. And I think that's something that France really needs to overcome in their general play with their forwards. They need to make sure that they're on point all the time throughout this next Six Nations competition. And if the French forward pack can do that, I think they're going to have an outstanding competition and perhaps go very close to winning it. So I was impressed with the French pack that played against the All Blacks. I think there were some standouts there. Flamand and Roumark were very, very good. Mifu was very good, and I thought their front row was exceptional, particularly Malvaca, who I thought had a really, really good game. So again, I think this French pack can cause some damage against all the other packs in the Six Nations competition, but is their consistency going to be on point, and can they bring that intensity all the way throughout the competition? Then we have Ireland, as far as I'm concerned, are going to be another one of the top packs. They've got a couple of young guys that are coming in. Dan Sheehan looks like he's going to be back in the team, and I think they really missed Dan Sheehan, as far as I was concerned, in their most recent games in the Autumn International Series. So I think Ireland are going to be up there with France in terms of being able to compete. Ireland need to sort out their lineouts. That's been an area of weakness as far as I've seen over the Autumn International Series, and a lot of you have made comments of that as well in the comment threads. So I think Ireland are going to have another one of the best packs in the Six Nations for next year. And then moving on, I think we're going to see Scotland also be very competitive in the forwards. However, I think there's going to be another area of the Scottish game that could be a potential weakness, and I'm going to talk about in this particular video. And then I think the last pack that's, I think, going to be very dangerous in the Six Nations is going to be England. And I know a lot of you have been concerned about their front row, but I think it's improving, and I think with the likes of Itoje there and Martin, and Cunning himself has been playing exceptional, Ben Earl at number 8, and I think there's a real opportunity for England to have one of the best packs going around in the Six Nations. So those are the four teams that I think are going to really have an advantage in the forwards. Who comes out on top? Well, for me, I think it's going to be either Ireland or France are going to win the forward battle in the Six Nations next year. Okay, looking at the backs now, and who's going to have the best backline throughout the Six Nations? Well, for me, it's got to be England and Scotland. I think are going to be up there, because we saw a lot of the teams scoring tries in the Autumn International Series through their forwards, and that was something I was a little bit disappointed in, particularly when it came to Ireland. We didn't see enough penetration from their backs to be able to score tries, and we saw a lot of tries coming from the likes of Josh van der Fleer, McCarthy and Doris and others, and I think Ireland needs to recapture that ability to be able to score tries out wide. So for me, England's got a very good backline. We saw them score a lot of points, even though they lost that tight one against Australia. They were good, and I think Marcus Smith is obviously going to be one of their key pins in terms of getting their backline away. and they do have some pace and opportunity out wide when they get attacking. So look for England to have one of the best backlines. But I've been thoroughly impressed with Scotland and their backline in recent times, and they just weren't able to do it against South Africa. But I think in the Six Nations, when they're going to be giving a little bit more of an opportunity, I think they're going to be able to strike. And of course, with Finn Russell just mastering everything from the number 10 jersey, and Tuipulotu I think is having one of the best seasons that I've seen him have for Scotland. Hugh Jones, of course, outside of him, and that has to be one of the best centre pairings in World Rugby at the moment. And of course, with the likes of Darcy Graham and Duhan van der Merwe on the wings, Scotland has a lot of ability to score tries. It's going to be up to see whether their forwards can generate enough position and territory on the front foot for Scotland to be able to really do some damage. So for me, England and Scotland backlines, they stand out for me for the Six Nations next year. Followed closely by France and Ireland. There's not too much in it, but I just haven't seen enough recently from France and Ireland. Again, France have been scoring tries through their forwards, so I'd like to see Dupont stand up and get his backline away. And I think with Thomas Ramos in there at number 10, we've seen a different kind of France. They've been controlling the ball a lot more, but they've got a lot of weapons. And let's look at Biel Biarri on the wing as one of those weapons that they can get away. And we saw Barre also score some good tries for them in the Autumn International Series. So France can be dangerous. Again, it's going to be a matter of whether they get enough ball to be able to get their attack away in the back line. So when it comes to Ireland, Bundyark, he came back and had a great last game in the Autumn International Series. I thought he really recaptured his form that a lot of people in Ireland in particular have been talking about him falling away a little bit. But for me, a lot of it's going to depend on Sam Prendergast and Jack Crowley and those two, and who plays and what they do as far as their ignition of that Irish backline. I think we need to see more from James Lowe and Mac Hansen as well. They haven't been playing at their optimal level, I thought, in the Autumn International Series as far as try scoring goes. And Hugo Keenan needs to probably inject himself a little bit more in on attack as well. So let's see what Ireland does. They've been off the ball a little bit compared to the other teams in my opinion, but let me know in the comments whether you agree with me on that one or not. Now, of course, the strength of the benches are going to be vital, I think, in the Six Nations starting in January. And I think that for me, Ireland and France stand out when it comes to their bench options. We saw France against the All Blacks, and that was a really pivotal game for their bench to come on and really do some good things. We saw the likes of Marchand and Wardy, who are brilliant, and Henri Colombert is also very good coming off the bench for France. And they've got the likes of Roumart that they can bring off the bench as well. And what they do with Olivon and Aldrit, those are the two other options. Is Aldrit going to start and Olivon come on? And they've got brilliant players like Crow and Bourdant as well. So there's a lot of options there for Fabien Gaultier when it comes to his bench, and I thought they did particularly well against the All Blacks in that last 20 minutes of the game. They were able to manage it and they came away with that 1-point win. Again, this is going to be a very vital part of France's performance in the Six Nations, I think, because their consistency has to be on in all of their games. Now, they're going to be playing Ireland in the very first game in round 1 of the Six Nations in Marseille. So it's going to be a home game for the French, and they're going to have to start off the competition very strongly. And I suspect that could be the game of the competition next year. So let's watch out for the impact of the French bench in that game. Now, I'm getting excited about Ireland's newcomers in the bench, and I'm talking about the likes of Gus McCarthy, who we saw play a great part in the Autumn International Series, and I think this young guy is going to be an absolute gem for the Irish team. So look for him to have a really big impact in the Six Nations. And O'Toole was another one also that came on and had a really good impact. So I liked what Andy Farrell was doing, and of course Easterby will continue doing with the young guys coming through for Ireland, and I think they can have a really good impact on off the bench. And you've got the old heads as well in terms of Henderson and Omani that can come on and make a difference. So I think the Irish bench is going to be very strong. I put it up there with the French bench, and I think depending on who plays the best throughout the competition, also taking into consideration discipline and also potential injuries. So how is the depth going to play out for those two teams? I think they're pretty much even when it comes to that level. So I'm putting France and Ireland having the strongest benches for the Six Nations next year. And the reason I've chosen those two, if we look back to the South Africa game against Scotland, we saw Scotland falling away a little bit and compared to the impact that the South African bench had when they came on. And I think that might be a potential weakness for Scotland in next year's competition when it comes to their bench. The same for England. I didn't see their bench having a huge impact in the games that they played. So they're going to need to turn that around, and the selections are going to be very interesting from Steve Borthwick. He's got to have some impact off that bench. And we saw England thinking that they'd won a couple of those games early on in the international series, but in the last 20 minutes they got run down. So that's going to be an area where they really need to compete. Up until this stage I haven't spoken about Italy at all, and it's because I haven't honestly put them back up there in terms of having the strongest forward pack, having the best backline, or having a strong bench. And I think Gonzalo Quesada's journey with Italy is evolving, and I think he's going to need to be given 2025 to really take this team to the next level. I thought they were a little bit disappointing in the autumn international series after what we saw from them in the Six Nations earlier this year, and I hope that Italy's able to regather their form. They've been a little bit unlucky with injuries, but I'm really wanting to see them step up in the competition early in 2025. But I don't see them having one of the strongest forward packs, one of the strongest backlines, or one of the strongest benches. So I think they are going to struggle in this year's competition, but they might have some joy against Wales. Now, talking about Wales, because I haven't mentioned them so far in this episode either, and it's because, again, like Italy, I think they're in very similar stages of rebuilding and having some troubles bringing that team together. It's been very well documented, and I don't need to go on about it too much about Warren Gatland and what's been happening to Wales over the course of 2024. I think he'll just be wanting to start 2025 off on a good foot, and if they can get an early win in the Six Nations competition, maybe it'll turn around the fortune of Welsh rugby, but we'll have to wait and see. So who's going to win the Six Nations in 2025? Well, the big answer from me is I don't know, to be honest, but I think that Ireland versus France game in the very first round is going to be a pivotal game in the competition, and it's going to be a favourite to France because they're playing at home in Marseille. But Ireland is very good, and I think with some of these young players coming in and Dan Sheehan possibly coming back in for selection, I think that's going to really lift this Ireland team. We need to see more from their backline and scoring more tries out wide, because they're not going to be able to always win the games by going through the forward pack and relying on them. They need to sort the line out. And France, well, as far as I'm concerned, if they can raise their level of consistency to put in those really good performances that we know that they're capable on, well, they can beat any team in the world on their day, and that's why they're ranked where they are in world rugby at the moment. So for me, it's a toss-up between Ireland and France on who's going to win the competition. But as we get closer to the games kicking off and we start to see the teams being selected, I might update my position on that one. But here's my word of warning: do not write Scotland off in the 2025 Six Nations competition. I think they're going to be very competitive. As I said earlier, they've got a very good backline. They can score a lot of tries, and as long as their forwards can compete and their bench is good, that's going to determine the outcome for Scotland, I think, in the competition. So keep your eye on them. So France, Scotland and Ireland, those are the ones that I'm going to put my emphasis behind in terms of having the best opportunity, I think, of winning the Six Nations in 2025. So there we go. Let me know in the comments what you think. This is my first take on it. I am going to come back with plenty more content before we get into the competition, once we start to see the nature of the teams, and I'll talk about the actual games, who's going to be playing who to start off with in round one, and give you my previews for that as well. So stick around here on Inside Rugby with Mark for all the great international rugby in 2025 from across the world, kicking off with the Six Nations competition at the end of January. I'll see you again really soon right here on the channel. Until next time, it's time to say adios from beautiful Cancun in Mexico. Stay well, stay safe everyone, keep enjoying your rugby across the world, and I'll see you again really soon. Bye for now.